There is increasing dissatisfaction with Putin's policies among Russia's top-ranking military officers. More and more officers are openly questioning the strategy of war against Ukraine, calling it disastrous for the army and Russia itself. Is discontent with Putin really brewing among top officers in the Russian military? Can we talk about a real rift between the professional military and the Kremlin's political leadership? This is the question Charter 97 asked Ukrainian politician and former Verkhovna Rada deputy Boryslav Bereza. Experts said that this information is not confirmed, but has the right to exist. But what I know for sure is that the prisoners, both officers and soldiers of the Russian army, clearly comment in their testimonies on what is really being discussed. Ukraine cannot be defeated. The destruction of Russian troops is underway. In fact, they say that soon the place of Russian men will be taken by others. This is what the soldiers and officers are discussing. Moreover, they say that victory over Ukraine seems fantastic to them, given that Ukraine is being helped by the whole world. And the most interesting thing they say is that even if Ukraine were defeated, the war would continue and they would not return home. That is, Russian soldiers would continue to suffer. This, by the way, is understood by all the captured officers and soldiers who testify, and it is recorded. What the generals are talking about, I cannot say, because unfortunately no captured generals have been recorded so far, the expert added. According to him, history shows that it is the military that can become the protest force that can revolt. This history is not only according to Prigozhin, it is also the history of the exit from World War I. Soldiers took their overcoats, went home, and then joined the revolutionary masses in order to overthrow the government. And Russia has shown time and time again that this is possible. But now, at this moment, I don't see any preconditions for this to happen in the near future. In the long term, yes, it is possible. What's more, the so-called participants of the SWO who return home show that they are dissatisfied with the way they are met. They are dissatisfied with what is happening, and when they return, they become deviants in their environment. After that, of course, they encounter the system, and the system begins to crush them. If there is a critical mass of such deviants, they can, of course, start some processes, especially since they know who to kill, are quite conflictual, and believe that the authorities have screwed them, which, by the way, is true. In the long term, this is possible. At the moment, there are no signs of revolt, unfortunately, he said. The expert recalled that money is the main motivator to serve in the Russian army today. If there is no money, there will be no motivation. The average Russian is not ready to die for the O0 cooperative, for the interests of Putin, the Rottenbergs, Peskov, Lavrov, and Patrushev. That's why the war has become an opportunity for Putin to contain this potential for protests, channeling it to the front, and they're grinding it down. Putin understands well in the long run that war for him is not only an exhausted resource, it is also a minimization of potential future deterrents to control the crowds. And the crowds, who are already beginning to feel the lack of funding, the lack of money, and the fact that virtually everything is going to war because social spheres are being truncated, and really only the military sphere is left to support. They are beginning to be dissatisfied with this kind of life. The latest Levada Center polls show that more and more people want the war to end and return to the period that was before, not realizing that it won't be like that anymore. Another thing is that quite a large part of the population is dissatisfied with what is happening and doesn't believe that it will be good in the long run if the war stays. So let's just say that anti-militarist sentiment in Russia is starting to grow. Even the idiots with Russian passports have realized that the deterioration in living standards is a consequence of the war that Putin unleashed, which they themselves supported. And now they have no one to be angry at but themselves. So they are looking for someone to take their anger out on. And here it would be good that the properly channeled negativity went into the direction of Putin and his entourage, he claimed.
The U.S. Secretary of Defense said Saturday that Beijing's aggression in the South China Sea has increased, and pledged to continue dialogue to ensure China is not seeking to dominate ASEAN nations. According to Associated Press, speaking at a meeting of ASEAN leaders in Malaysia, Pete Hegseth labeled Chinese actions in the disputed waterway provocative and said they show a lack of respect for their neighbors. China's sweeping territorial and maritime claims in the South China Sea fly in the face of their commitments to resolve disputes peacefully. Here, the opportunity to talk is something we value. But inside that dialogue, we are most importantly watching actions, Hegseth said. Earlier this week, Hegseth met with his Chinese counterpart Dong Jun on the sidelines of the summit in Kuala Lumpur. He said he directly raised U.S. concerns over Chinese activities in the South China Sea, around Taiwan, and toward U.S. allies and partners in the region. China's defense ministry issued a cautious response, emphasizing its long-standing positions. Their meeting follows a September 9 video call between Hegseth and Dong and reflects ongoing efforts to manage tensions in the Indo-Pacific even as strategic differences, particularly over Taiwan and freedom of navigation, remain pronounced.
When I was with many of you at the Shangri-La dialogue, I noted in my remarks that China's behavior toward its neighbors and the world is a wake-up call, which it is. Shared examples of intimidation, harassment, and illegal activities occurring within your sovereign waters and across the South China Sea. Unfortunately, in the months since then, China's destabilizing actions have only increased. You've seen it. The world has seen it. It's on videotape. Some of you have been on the active and receiving end of it. Ramming and blasting water cannons at ships and baselessly claiming that there's trespassing going on. Unlawfully claiming jurisdiction over waters that are not theirs to claim. Attempting to regulate and limit peaceful military actions by other nations. Even the location of the ADMN Plus maritime exercise scheduled for next year. And we recently saw Beijing's unjustifiable claim of Scarborough Reef as a, quote, nature reserve. Again, you don't put platforms on nature reserves. And yet another attempt to coerce new and advanced territorial and maritime claims in the South China Sea at your expense. China's provocative actions also demonstrate a lack of respect for your countries, challenging and threatening territorial sovereignty. China's sweeping territorial and maritime claims in the South China Sea fly in the face of their commitments to resolve disputes peacefully. And I will say I welcome the dialogue. Obviously, both our President Trump and Chairman Xi have had, both myself and Dong Jun here. The opportunity to talk is something we value. We will continue. Dialogue is important. But inside that dialogue, we are most importantly watching actions very closely. We seek peace. We do not seek conflict. But we must ensure that China is not seeking